a beautiful hat? The cowrie shells and the beads make such a detailed pattern.
Do you have any idea how it's actually used?
Yes, it's an mpaan. It was worn on ceremonial occasions or to funerals by wealthy and important women in the Kuba Kingdom, an African kingdom in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, formerly known as Zaire.
With something that important, I can see why the design was so detailed. It must have taken a lot of planning.
You're right. Look at the way these black and white beads repeat around the edges of the hat. There's an alternating 3 rows of white beads, then 3 rows of black beads, and it keeps going and going. That must have taken a lot of patience.
Let's get in the mindset of the people who designed this hat. Let's design a pattern of our own. But since we're in the 21st century, let's use technology.
That's a great idea. How can we make our own pattern inspired by the patterns we see here on this hat, but different?
I noticed a good number of exhibits at the museum that use repeating patterns. There are a lot of other artworks here and different places that use repeating patterns.
You're right, we've got patterns everywhere. You know, a repeating pattern has 2 main parts, terms and cores. The objects that form a pattern are called its terms.
So, the black beads and the white beads are the term in our repeating pattern in the hat.
Exactly. The part of a repeating pattern that stays the same and repeats itself is called its core.
So the core in our pattern is a set of 3 black beads and a set of 3 white beads in this V shape.
Right. Let's make our own repeating patterns on the computer. I can just use PowerPoint.
Great patterns. I think I could keep going for a long time, don't you?
Oh yeah.
The hat looks very balanced, doesn't it? They made sure the left side and the right side were almost completely the same. But if you look closely, you can see they're not completely symmetrical, but I think the designers were going for that feel.
I think you're right. The design is very symmetrical. This kind of symmetry is called bilateral symmetry. You can imagine that if you drew a straight line down from the top of the hat, the 2 halves would be very similar to each other. Not exactly, but close. Kind of like our own faces, or the face of this tiger. Those repeating patterns we talked about help give this hat the feel of balance and symmetry.
What else do you think we could use to make repeating patterns? In the mpaan we saw colored beads, and on your computer you use colors, letters, numbers, and smiley faces.
What about patterns of sound? I think I could go home and listen to my favorite songs and listen for repeating patterns with musical notes.
That's a great idea. There are all kinds of patterns everywhere, aren't there? There's a great overlap between math, science, and art when it comes to pattern making. They don't call math the science of patterns for nothing. What patterns do you see or hear around you, and what patterns can you make? Whether that's using your computer or not.